Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2025. I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Streaming Media and Chair of Streaming Media Connect. And it's my privilege to welcome you to Publishers Pay to Play Free, Next Steps in Ad-Based Streaming Monetization. We'll get started in just a moment with an all-star panel, but first a few housekeeping notes. The first person to correctly identify the track and the artist that you heard as we were joining the panel here today will win a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of the session, but you must be present to win. So stick around because it's going to be a great discussion here. The chat is open, so chat in the chat. And if you have questions for the panel, we'll take them probably toward the end of the session. So put those in the Q&A so they don't scroll away, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. We will be back live and in person October 6th to 8th in Santa Monica for Streaming Media 2025. The link for registration and the advanced program are in the chat, so you can see what's going to be going on there. The program is largely set, but we're still looking for speakers. So if you have a topic you want to speak on, if you have an area of expertise you want to share with us, respond to the call for speakers that's also going to be linked in the chat, and let us know what your superpower is, and we'll see if we can get you into the program. I think that's everything for me. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Brian Ring of Ring Digital, hashtag Future of TV. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me get my camera up. Really appreciate it.
I can almost see you.
Not quite smooth. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm getting a little delay, so it's clicking. There it goes. Okay,
there
excellent.
you are.
Excellent. Okay, great. Listen, I appreciate everybody joining us. We're going to have a lot of Q&A. We're going to cover a lot of great topics. We got an hour here, so really excited about it. Let me introduce my panelists. First of all, we got David Hassoun. He's the co-chair of the Advertising Working Group of the SVTA, an important group that's Jason Thibault founded years ago to focus on streaming standards. So I'm excited to see that they have an ad working group. We've also got Andrew Barretts. And Andrew is CEO of Eventually a Castle. He's an ad tech guru, and I want to give a big hat tip to a guy named Tony Huidor, who was just promoted, by the way, to Cineverse Technology Group. They've been doing so much good stuff over there at Cineverse, and one of the things, maybe lesser known, because they've got Matchpoint and Cinesearch, lots of really good stuff going on, but they've also really taken an aggressive effort on the publishing side to create an audience platform that enables buyers to come in. So we're going to talk a lot more about that. That's Cineverse 360, but I do want to give a proper shout out to Tony for bringing you into my life, Andrew, because you're have some incredible insights that have really kind of changed my views on some of this stuff. So we'll get into that in a second. Next, we've got CJ Leonard. She is VP of Publisher Operations for FanServe. I'll kick off the panel in a second with a little bit of a history. And I loved my prep call with CJ because she's basically been there through that whole arc. So we're going to talk a little more about how the ad tech acronym soup has evolved over the years, and CJ is going to give us some great insights on that. And then last but not least, we have Raymond Holton. Raymond is the Senior Director of the IAB's IAB Tech Lab, and he's the Senior Director of Advanced TV, excuse me. Probably no more important topic than standards in this industry. We have a lot to cover here. Some generic questions that I have, but really want to just start it off here with Ray, because there are a bunch of hot topics that we want to cover here. But let me set the stage with this. Not a couple of weeks ago, even, Magnite introduced their next gen of SpringServe, and basically kind of officially in this new release has subsumed SpringServe, meaning also the Magnite supply platform. And I felt that was a good time just to go all the way back to, and CJ, I may ask you to help me here a little bit, but Rubicon, and then them buying Teleria, which gave them a little bit of CTV, and then they double and triple down again and buy SpotX, a little known company, SpringServe at the time, which has an open source product. Lots of people are building it. They're kind of opening that side of the equation. But then a couple of years hence, I've heard many people, and I want you to comment on this, that actually that was quite a clever transaction, and that Magnite now with ad serving tied in, it's sort of an interesting next evolution. I'm just curious what your take is, and they also bring the term mediation layer to the equation. I saw Sean Buckley talking about how that's going to be a little bit of what they're calling their new kind of service or solution here. What's your take on the evolution of this game? Where are we now? We've had the SSPs and the DSPs and the exchanges, where to now, and I think you'll help us explain that a lot of people are trying to go direct. So give us a high level take on the evolution of the ad space and what you've seen over time and where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the evolution of what has become Magnite because I was there at Telaria in February 2019, and I was brought on to the corp strategy team to help them go to market with Telaria's ad server. And so, the world of build versus buy, not even 12 months later, the Rubicon, it was a merger of equals when it was announced, but it was really an acquisition by Ruby. And then now seeing, I was shocked when they picked up SpotX and, the elites were, now together. But yeah, I mean, Telaria, I was brought on at the time in 2019 to actually try to get the ad server that Telaria had built, which Telaria had been built out of Tremor, right? So this history of going back of this forming and norming and jettisoning technology. Telaria kind of divorced the parents, and they spun off Tremor. That we thought we had an ad server at the time. After a few months, it was, well, this isn't gonna pass muster with the big guys, enterprise guys like Freewheel and GAM. So where were we going to find our niche? Even SpringServe at the time, and it was developing an ad server that was uh, more superior. So it was really interesting to see that evolution. All of a sudden now they're all in the family. So just as an external, I was a short timer at Telaria, but I did get to see it through the acquisition, and then that happened after. And so, yeah, a lot of M&A and a lot of interesting takes on that.
So next I'm going to go to Andrew and get your take on this because high level I think that's at the stage, and then I'm going to go to Ray, and then we'll follow up with David on the rest of these topics and standards in the ad space, etc. Give me your take, Andrew, of where we are today. We start with the DSPs, the SSPs. There's all these different players, and I think you kind of just explained it well about the power dynamics and trying to cut around another buyer, trying to get around floor information, etc. So paint the picture of how it's come along and where we are today, where you are really deciding, or Cineverse really making the bold statement of like, hey, we're not going to compete with the big guys at their game, but we've got our own distribution scale that we're working on, maybe mini scale. Describe for me how you guys are attacking this.
Absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. And within that, there's a very big shift in power dynamics over the last 24 months, 36 months in CTV, as there's a shakeup across DSPs, SSPs, how publishers connect to them, and the various intermediation and mediation layers across the different services, whether that's Publica, SpringServe, IndieQ, C360, or others. There's a shift in the traditional path that a buyer gets to an advertiser, gets to a publisher, and vice versa. And we've seen this with Trade Desk and OpenPath, Magnite, and other exchanges and SSPs cutting deals with advertisers directly, and often and more increasing publishers going direct to those advertisers as well. So when you look at C360 and platforms like what Cineverse is doing, it's to help those buyers get closer to the publishers and creating those technology solutions to bring buyers directly to the publishers with as few of those layers as possible, while still being available on all of those other layers. We've really hit a broad commoditization of each of these different pieces of the ecosystem. So depending on where you used to sit doesn't directly require you to still sit there. Right. And we've seen that across many different businesses, DSPs, SSPs, publisher networks, audience networks, and the lines have become very blurred as to who does what, how do they do it, should they be doing it, are they doing it right, and who does it bring value to? So as Magnite continues to grow, as they pick up other companies, as publishers begin to grow and gain more confidence and there are more tools in the market for them to access, there's a lot of growth and shifting in how those buyers are going to reach those publishers, and how those publishers are going to provide opportunities for those buyers to reach them.
Yep. No, it's great. And I want to give one more credit to you, CJ, because you made a comment on our prep call, pipes is pipes, which is a fantastic line because everyone knows that in Seinfeld, right? No, you're gonna mix them up. So I think what's critical from here to jump into is kind of some of the standards. So I'm going to go to you, Ray, on this. And I think the first one we're going to kick off here is the ASIF, the Ad Creative ID Framework. So just kind of top to bottom, help us understand what that is and how it drives more efficiency in the ad stack.
Sure, absolutely. So ASIF, the Ad Content ID Framework, allows for advertisers to get a single ID assigned to each of their ad creatives and have that ID passed all along the supply chain, no matter which publisher or agency or ad server they're using, so that it's consistent and will allow them to do easier reporting, easier content distribution. As Andrew said, as we're bringing buyers and advertisers closer to the publisher, they are now dealing with several partners, not just one or two. So as they're running ads across 8 different platforms or with 8 different agencies, this allows them to be consistent with running the same ID across all the platforms and making sure that they're reaching their audience at scale.
We talked a little bit about there are other countries and the globalization nature of that do a similar process. And does this help that, or is that not that problem?
Sure. So we built this as a framework, not as a registry. There are multiple registries throughout the world. United States primarily uses Ad ID, but in other portions of the world, there are actually government regulations that require clearinghouses to review any ads going to air on television. So those clearinghouses actually end up creating their own ad registries as they're verifying and validating all of the ad creatives. So we've created this framework so that no matter which ad registry you use, or if you create your own ad registry, all of that can be passed along the way. So it'll tell you the registry you're using for that creative, as well as the ID within that registry. This also gives advertisers greater control over who has access to the metadata that they are providing. It allows advertisers to attach specific metadata to an ad creative and then limit who is able to see that metadata across the board, no matter which registry they're using.
Any comments from the others? I know we didn't prep on this exactly, but David, CJ, Andrew, on the ad content ID format, is that impacting some of your work or?
Long overdue, and no, to be honest, on my end, I would love to. I come from Iris, I come from CBS, NBC. I've been around the block, and it's long overdue. I think I'm excited to see that there's a framework, because I think, Jared Wilczynski, he had a panel I think before, but on the last panel we did, he was advocating for that, and it's been going on for 15 years. People have been just use the same ID. We used to, as ad ops professionals at NBC, we would just assign an ID 8 years ago, and now it's getting everyone to start rowing in the same direction. I'm excited by it. A big thing on my end is all the signals, whether it's coming from the publisher or the advertiser. How do I bring that all together in my role at FanServe for local sports? But just in general, being able to see what the ad, have that ad information, and then also, there's other things you can do with that. The context of the content, you can start tying things together that you couldn't before, because of an identifier that seems so small and and basic, but it's such a, mountain range is the move here, not just it's not a small thing. So I'm
someone
excited.
just asked a quick question, and then I think Ray, thank you for clarifying, but is this adid.org?
So Ad ID is one of the registries that are being used. Ad ID is a nonprofit industry organization focused on, I believe, North America. And as part of any SAG-AFTRA, any actors, if a commercial has a SAG-AFTRA actor, then it has an Ad ID assigned as part of measurement and payment. But it's really, a registry can be set up by anyone. Like I said, the clearinghouses are their own registry, UK, France, Australia. And then ad ID is something in the US where that's actually paid for by the advertiser. But I mean, whether it's a scheduling system or an in-house, they can all be their own registry as long as they guarantee the uniqueness of the ad ID, as well as support the validation API. So that is a call from anywhere along the tech stack. You can call this API to validate that. Is this ID real? Is it who is the advertiser? What's the ad? How long is the ad? What is the language? As well as additional metadata that may be available or restricted based upon the rights and authorization of the advertiser.
Awesome.
So Ray, what with the work that's sort of gone into ad ID and all the data that's in there, at least in North America, is that going to be able to transfer over and adhere to the ASIF stuff relatively easily, or is it kind of it goes away and it's something new and they have to rebuild the registry from that format?
Nothing needs to be rebuilt. Each registry defines the format of their particular ID. So as long as they ensure the uniqueness of the ID and it will fit within the signaling, everything is fine. But each registry has their own specific ID format. As long as it doesn't, as long as it's unique to the registry, there is no issue with overlap.
And just
and we're looking forward
to. Go ahead.
Sorry, I say we're looking forward to in the SVTA, working with IAB as well and start bringing in this ASIF stuff into some of the standards work we're doing around ad metadata, specifically the stuff that's for more of the implementation on the clients, the applications and platforms, for driving that, since we've been doing a lot of work in the standards there. So Ray and I've already talked about that in the past. That's one of the things that we're looking towards, bringing in this next version of the specifications we have going as well.
I mean, just big picture, like zooming out on this though, more efficiency, ability to tell frequency capping on different places, correct? David, give me a bullet point, including some of those. Like, what are the benefits here from your view?
Of ASIF or standardization in general? I mean, what we're working on right now is we just got approval from the board after going through the whole SVTA member voting, is a version 2 of the ad metadata and signaling documentation for here's how you can take everything that's wonderful from the vast data that we need and be able to translate that into whether it goes into manifest or it goes into interstitial calls and server guide ad insertion and so forth, the different ways to translate and also transfer that data so it actually received by the clients in these new ad workflows, from SSAI to SGAI. So we've been working towards getting that. We now have this new version that really goes far more robust, kind of detailed out, and now will be published any day now. And that's one of the big focuses, and that's where we have the opportunity to also bring in other stuff like the ASIF and so forth towards that, so we can kind of drive to like, hey, this is the right way to do this and how to structure it, how to make sure it looks, and where to kind of connect these pieces and parts.
So, standards are critical. We need more of them. It's a very complex marketplace. So there's lots of stuff going on here, which I do think is really interesting. But I do have a big picture question, having been familiar with VAST, for example, for many years, right? And it was like, there was 2 and then there was 3. And I remember 4 was a big deal. And now I sort of get the sense, like if I ask people like, hey, are you VAST 4? Like, well, kind of, whatever. And people, I even saw this like VAST 2 plus. So somehow it's had huge success, huge traction. It's been super important. But I asked this is kind of a tough question I asked to Ray, but I'm going to start with you, David. Is VAST now getting like too big for its britches? Is there something else that needs to be looked at to help smooth out some of these workflows? You tell me what you would answer if someone said, where's VAST today?
So, I mean, this is actually, Ray's going to have I think a great answer to this, far better than me, but I agree that I think VAST has had its time. It got a lot of baggage added over the years and so forth, and complexity that kind of, I don't want to say messed it up, but made things a little more convoluted at times. It still has value, but I do think that as we look towards the future, there's the potential for revolution, innovation, whatever you want to call that, on how we can evolve into something other than what VAST was, and more towards what we need, and maybe a little leaner, cleaner towards the future.
All right, Andrew, real quick, and then I'll go to you, Ray, for the final on this one.
Absolutely. I think was very well said by David. VAST continues to hold a really strong place, but I would look at it similar to the adoption of OpenRTB within various ad serving platforms that used to use VAST. And similar to OpenRTB, it's only as good as the custom extensions that your upstream partners have integrated and your downstream partners have integrated. And I think that holds true for any transaction standard that's being used between these different pieces of technology. There's a standardization and there's a format, but there's still customization at various layers to account for different business models, different technologies, custom solutions. And to the point, VAST 3, VAST 2, VAST 4, there's a lot of question mark as to what you should use, and it determines how legacy is your platform, what ad tech are you using, what are your buyers upstream using, and where across your ecosystem has that been implemented, what are the features you're looking for. So I think in many cases, it's still plenty good, and in other cases, it's not quite anymore. But with any standards and kind of large scale ecosystem of this nature, there's a very regular conversation is good the enemy of perfect. And I think VAST is still good in many cases. It's definitely not perfect. And I'm curious to see where we go with OpenRTB, direct XML integrations, deeper integrations into publisher technology, in what we've seen within mediation layers integrating with Exchange and ad server technology. More data passing through, more IDs being utilized equals a better customer experience. And I think that checks the box for publishers, advertisers, and the technology platforms in between. If we all know this is the same ad, then we can ensure publishers aren't seeing it back to back. We can provide better customer experience.
So you brought,
I
okay,
think it's
one quick follow-up for you, though. I really want to cover this. So you mentioned the term mediation layer, and then you kind of taught me a little bit before we got on here. Help me understand, where does this term come from, and what is it today?
I think this is really the growth of how publishers connect to ad solutions. And I think for a very long time, that mediation layer was the SSP, who was your partner in connecting to a variety of demand sources. I think over time, as CTV developed, SpringServe's, Publica's, and other ad tech solutions began to grow, that layer shifted downstream with more control to the publisher, being able to make decisions, being able to control that layer in a different way. I think that's going to continue to shift. But to me, mediation layer is the final layer that the publisher controls to determine what ads are viewed by the end consumer and why. So that's where rules are set, standards are determined, and the controls are triggered for brand safety, for customer experience, for all of the variety of different use cases, and where Ray's IDs are going to end up being the most powerful for the publisher in terms of that customer experience.
Yeah. I mean, you also, just to add on a little bit, you do seem, we're in a point of time here where, as I mentioned earlier, there's so much ad tech. We're very mature in this industry. You've talked about, well, first we had Publica, SpringServe, they were like video first and really some of the earliest players. You now, I sense, is sort of opening for challenger upstarts in this space. You mentioned IndiQ. They've been one. They've been at the shows and making good progress. There are probably others. It does seem like kind of a fun time for me. If it's a software guy, like, yeah, I used to think of an ad server. I guess when I was younger, 10, 15 years ago, we were at Ericsson. We're like, maybe we should build one of these. No, those are way too big and hard. But I think we're at a different place. And maybe that's true of all of software, where it's just easier to build your own bespoke solutions. And in an environment like this, with all the messiness of the pipes, it's super critical. Okay, transition over to you, Ray. Tell me about your answer. What's your take on the VAST? And then we'll go from there into the ad formats task force. Sorry for the long wind up there.
Oh, no problem. The way I see it is the way video advertising has evolved. It's no longer one size fits all. It's not even one size fits many. There's so much fragmentation and differences in goals. So it's no longer just TV advertising for brand awareness. There's this two-way communication between the viewer, the device, and the publisher and the advertiser that allows for a more robust and flexible model. So yes, VAST has been around a long time and it is a strong building block. But because there are so many use cases tied to it with different priorities, to make giant steps forward isn't going to work for every organization or every supply chain. So we're looking at what are these small changes that we can make that will allow for greater flexibility, greater customization, and greater adaptability across the industry. And that's similar to ASIF. But then also not throwing out everything that was already done, but trying to expand upon that by additional standards or additional use cases. So for instance, we have our CIMID standard, which is used for interactivity. So it's still, working part with VAST, but also having this additional feature set that's built upon a widely deployed platform.
Awesome. Okay, let's dive into the ad task format. What is it? Sorry, the ad task force initiative, ad format task force initiative. This is really fun stuff, guys. So 100 submissions, 30 companies, and 7, Ray, you told me 7 CTV ad formats were identified. And you're going to tell me a little bit about what we're doing on this, but I just want to name them. Pause ads, which we actually talked quite a bit about that last year on a similar panel here. Menu home screen ads. If you haven't seen the Roku autoplay, right? Disney Moana 2, if you want to know why that one did so well, a lot of those ads came up. Screensaver ads, my favorite. You can get my free research on screen servers, which I conducted not too long ago. It's really interesting how different set-top boxes like the Apple and the Google are really loved by their users. People put their photos up there. Of course, on Roku, you have the Roku City. So I find that to be a fascinating area. Overlay ads, which I think a lot of people have talked about. We don't exactly know. I mean, there's very many executions and creatives, which we're going to talk about. That's why we're trying to standardize. In-scene ads. And then content squeeze back ads. L-bar, PIP, the side-by-side, and some interactivity, right? So I got that right. And Ray, take it from there. What's this about, and what do you hope to achieve with this? And then I'm going to go around the horn on these, and David, you'll get to hit your hybrid ad insertion talking points. So go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. So in order to maximize monetization of content, you have to go beyond traditional mid-roll and pre-roll ads with additional formats without degrading the user experience. So as you said, we reached out to the industry as a whole, said, what ad formats are out there? And in many of these cases, they are, one-off solutions developed for specific use cases or specific publishers. What we wanted to do was identify the top ad formats and then look to how can we define the standards around those creatives, so that an advertiser can create an ad creative that, no matter if it's a pause ad on one platform or a pause ad in cable, that one content creative could be used in either because it meets this minimum standard. But also so that if I'm buying a squeeze back, I know exactly the minimum that I'm buying. There, different tech providers, different publishers can provide tweaks to it, but being able to say this is exactly the minimum, no matter what, you're going to get this as part of this ad format. That standardization makes it much easier to sell those types of ads as well as to implement them.
Yeah, no, it's critical. I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but I remember doing research, and you can pull up Fubo, wonderful set of ad formats and pause and this, that, and the other, and you immediately, your question comes up. Yeah, if I wanted to execute across multiple platforms, how do I do that? And you also brought up a great point, Ray, which is if you are running a pause ad on one app, who like Max, maybe they own the right and they own that ad. If you're running it somewhere else, maybe someone else owns that, right? So it's hard to know even in these situations who owns what, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's who owns the specific ad inventory, as well as who can put in restrictions on what is allowed. So there is, as streaming becomes more competitive and more fragmented, the ones that are going to win are the ones that have the better user experience, both for the visual user as well as the advertiser.
Right.
So having greater control of that, being better to curate the content better, curate the ad experience better, is what's really going to make a successful platform, both for large streamers and small streamers.
It's great. I want to make one other quick point when you hear about this, and you said this to me, that there was tremendous scarcity of inventory, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, we're flooded with inventory, not live premium, right? High priced inventory. That's where you need ad formats. Okay, so I'm just going to segue that, and I'll do the around the horn. So first, I'll go to you, David. I know we want to cover what I like to call hybrid ad insertion, which is called server guided. Give us a quick top level take of what that is and how you see that playing in with this ad format standardization that the IAB is working on.
Sure. So, as ad solutions have evolved, right? We went from client side, we went to server side, gave us a better experience and different reach and so forth. And as it's evolved, like a lot of the items that Raymond just touched on, the experience for ads and the demand for that experience to change is really growing, right? And no longer is just the basic linear ad solution really going to solve for the problems that we need to continue to do, the engagement for ad opportunity options and so forth within the streaming space. And that's one of the major benefits of server-guided ad insertion, or as you refer to as hybrid, right? Why is it considered hybrid? Well, it kind of takes a little bit of server-sided and brings that experience down to the client. It lets the server guide it and makes it so it's non-critical path. So if there's also a problem, it doesn't break the whole stream as it can with server-side ad solutions, but allows you to kind of get that nice seamless experience, but also have more options for better experiences. So you can do nonlinear ads, those overlays, those pullbacks, the pips, the L bars, and that's the big driver with that, as well as some other cool technical elements of that. But as we adopt and as we transition, that's always going to be a challenge and more things that we have to work through and start standardizing. So, another opportunity that we're looking to work between the SCTA and IAB is around some of this nonlinear ads and what we can do to start standardizing that. So from the players and platforms perspectives, we know exactly, hey, if we all implement it in this wonderful way, we can have the control needed. The IAB's already done some amazing research to understand, like, well, what are the different use cases that is out there and that need to be supported to really kind of cover that, and how we can then look to take that type of information and translate it into the specifications to cover those use cases and make that a standardized way so that things can work better, it can flow better, we can have better data, especially if we start transitioning potentially away in the future from VAST and so forth. How do we make sure that we cover all the bases so that we can have those wonderful experiences?
It's great. I mean, I've talked about this for a long time in the context of baseball. I'm a big fan. It's like the pitching change brought to you by Speedy Oil Change. So CJ to you, I mean, this type of stuff is sort of built for sports, right?
So yeah, and it is, except for we're looking into that. We have demand from the buy side. We have sales channels that we're working with that are hyper focused on live local sports, right? They have the demand, they have buyers asking for L bars, squeeze backs, things like that. But depending on where the experience is, if it's in game, there are vendors out there. I'm not working with anyone. I'm not promoting anyone, but Transmit or Harmonic are out there, and they have solutions for this. But others that are on Media Tailor, they have to build that out, right? So it's still in this phase of it's an individualized solution. It's who you're on, and it's going to be specific to, say, the Harmonic or the Transmit specs and so forth. And also, what came up recently was because things like an L bar or a squeeze back, you're not in the break. When you move out of the break and into the actual HLS of the game, there's challenges there that are arising. So we're excited to see, buyers are excited to see this, come about, take that, what they've known. I was watching the Rockies Phillies last night. They were doing some stuff for Rally House, but that was in the broadcast.
Correct.
Right? And so when you're trying to move that there's a POC for it, so to speak, for digital, but moving that in some way, where do you insert it? Those are the challenges that we're seeing, and just early days from our end in live local sports. Other areas may be ripe for it and may be doing more with it, but that's the challenges when you're working across, say, 30 MLB teams and or so many NBA, NHL teams. that each team, if they have their D2C app outside of MLB TV or the league pass and so forth, certain teams are releasing their own D2C apps. That's their own tech and may not fit the same bill as maybe what, and I don't know what MLB TV is looking into, but because obviously they have the broadcast, but yeah, you're going to have splintered fragmentation around implementation.
I mean, I just want to highlight a little bit on the technical side what you just said about broadcast, because I dealt with this, of course, at Amagi. We had a play out, like we could do actual squeeze backs, right? But what happens is you learn that there's a direct buy in a linear world. I want that one, or I want this one. It's happening in the production room. When you move to SSAI, it's just much more complicated in terms of what you're going to bring in, how it's going to work. And so I think it's really critical to point to that. And I guess I'll roll that to you, Andrew. What's your take on these ad formats? How are they? Because also, I mean, I know you serve other clients other than Cineverse, but like they're not sports. And so it becomes maybe a little bit, I don't know, maybe virtual placements is more interesting to you. Tell me what's interesting to you trick play-wise in these ad formats world.
I think these formats are amazing for the publisher. They can be really powerful for the consumer. It can increase viewership of the content you want to watch versus ad time. I think to the note that CJ mentioned, Ray mentioned, David mentioned, is the supply. And I think what the problem I see with the growth of these units is it's borderline a walled garden within a walled garden. You can be a large media buyer on the largest platform. You used Max as a good example prior. You might do lots of media buying within Max. Max owns all of their media space. It's available on some of those SSPs and DSPs, but those squeeze back units might not be. And to the note of CJ, there are different vendors doing this, and they're in competition with each other for that same media buy, those different standards, those different SSAI solutions. And you mentioned it with your experience at Amagi. Who owns the stream? And that becomes a really big question mark in the growth of these units, in how the technology has to be used to allow them. I think it touches on David's note of hybrid. I think it touches on Ray's note of standardization. It touches on how do publishers connect to the media in itself. Is these units often take very deep integrations. So that can limit who has access to them to larger streamers. It needs major economies of scale to make it viable. And it blocks certain publishers from being able to enact them due to how they may be distributed. These units are largely locked to owned and operated experiences where you're in control of the end platform, which means a channel in this fast world who may not own that platform may be limited to what type of formats they're allowed to integrate with, which technology platforms or partners have cut deals with those larger entities to allow them in. And then it continues to perpetuate that. Who has that control over the supply and demand relationship? Is it the publisher? Is it the technology? Is it the platform? And then we add that fun layer of broadcast of, did the MLB put a squeeze back in that's in conflict with the squeeze back the publisher may have rights to sell? So I think we're really early days with these formats. I think that they're going to be a major part of the CTV experience, just like they are in broadcast television today. We've seen lower thirds and squeeze backs and picture, especially in live sports, but in your morning cartoons, sponsoring the next episode. So I think it's just going to take time. It's going to take alignment from the content owners. It's going to take platform awareness. And I think the IAB and where Ray stands kind of in this standardization is going to become really, really important to help open those walled gardens so that a buyer can run that squeeze back across all of the main partners. That supply of those units can be commoditized versus locked into these walled gardens.
Okay, so I have a great question. It's poking at a really hot topic: the prevalence of these "be right back" slots, which I've been pushing for a long time to get more publishers investing money in creating refreshed, dynamic, automated slots like YouTube Moment of Zen, which I'm very proud. Hate to give myself, but push this on a panel actually similar to what we're doing here with AccuWeather, and then 6 months later, they've got AccuWeather now. And now, today, you've got NBC News doing innovative stuff with 2-minute breaks. By the way, I broke some news on LinkedIn. Roku, the Live Guide, has begun to implement these promotional units now. So you don't see all these be right backs, and they've done what Pluto's done, and they're really kind of engaging in this new, what I would think is a new inventory or a new type of ad format. And I want to go get opinions from all of you, but like, what about this idea? And YouTube's even doing this where they'll put a still image. It'll have some pictures, a little QR code. It says "Be right back." And I was always struck about how simple that was. Like that's not like some kind of AI generated thing. That's just like, hey, let's throw this up. And it makes you kind of wonder a little bit about this idea of like why. And here's the question very specifically. Would love to get the panel's take on the automatically generated video segments. So like weather updates, financial news briefs, and that how those can serve as dynamic real-time ad units. I'll start with you, Raymond. What do you think about all of these kinds of things? BBC and Tastemade, yes, they also do great ones. Thank you, Ava.
So I definitely see it as being a soon to be very popular form of advertising. So we've been calling it dynamic creative. So that is, they are optimizing a creative, in whatever manner in real time while they're serving the ad. So this, as you said, it's visit Florida and it gives you the real-time weather of Key West. There are so many unique ways in order to do this. And what makes it great is you can do that on any ad, just about any ad format. So it could be a traditional mid-roll, it could be a pause ad. So it's this new type of ad creative with interactivity or being dynamic that can then be applied to any of the traditional and new ad formats being delivered.
Huh. Interesting. And I guess this is an addendum. This is part of the ad squeeze back ads in that task format, correct? That's where you cover that interactivity, or has that not come into that?
We identified those 7 formats, and then we separated out a 8th one, which is just interactive, immersion, and extendable ads. So these are ads that either have viewer initiation, viewer work on it, where buttons to click, things like that, or it has some dynamic nature that is separate from just a traditional ad.
Okay, Andrew, to you on this one. I asked a lot of people about this, and I kind of, the way I used to frame it before is like, yeah, you don't want to disclose your floor, so we can't. If we go lower than that floor, it's trouble. You talked to me a little bit about this. Is that part of the problem? Like, yeah, I could sell these, but if somebody finds out that I'm selling them at a really, maybe not even a CPM basis, maybe it's just, hey, take them for the whole year or something like that. Tell me what you think is coming, Andrew, on this front.
I think price protection has always been a conversation in media, right? I think that there's a conversation of what should we sell at, what is the market selling at, and what brings value to a buyer. And I think that especially in CTV, if you're priced too low, that might come across as non-premium. It was briefly mentioned earlier of extremely high price, high premium live sports. We put a premium of quality against the price of the advertising, not always against a supply and demand basis, which is traditionally how pricing is created. So I think as intermediary and mediation layers continue to grow, there are different reasons for publishers to set different price points for different units. I think oftentimes direct sales has the highest price point, and it's because of the opportunity of guarantees, of placements, of targeting, where programmatic can compete with that now within these mediation layers. And it provides publishers an opportunity to value different types of inventory in different ways. You can value your squeeze back unit with real-time weather at a different price point than the first slot of your mid-roll, which can be valued differently than your pre-roll unit. And I think as the market continues to grow, as the supply starts to outweigh the demand, and as there's a reconciliation of how many eyeballs are there at any time in America actually watching TVs, we're going to have shifts in the economics of what is an ad worth, who is watching it, is someone watching it, or is this the TV that's been on? And I think that as validation and different viewership and measurement solutions continue to grow, the CPMs are going to adjust based on actual humans watching actual televisions and the engagement factor of it. And I think as there are more signals, as there is more measurement, CPMs are going to be deeply affected within those mediation layers, within those signals, to bring value to engagement, not just content. Is this live sports show being played in a room of 30 people? Is it a sports party? Are people watching the ads, or is that when they're using the restroom? And how we measure that, how we approach that when the unit, is it audio on? Is it audio off? Was it interacted with, or was it just an impression? Are all going to start really creating a different type of price matrix than I think we've ever seen before. And that's heavily layered with the future of AI agents, changing those prices and fighting with each other. It's going to create a different layer of mediation than we've ever seen before, where we're going to have a combat of goals. Publishers want the highest CPMs, buyers want the cheapest CPMs, but everybody wants quality.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. Throw more questions, guys. We're running close on time. I want to get to our really exciting, I should have teased this part at the beginning, but we have something really important to share, and it's from Ray from the IAB Tech Lab, and it's about the release for public comment, I believe, for the first time, Ray, right, of the real-time viewership API. So take us through what that is, what it means, what are the benefits, and let's get comment from around the table.
Sure. So, one of our goals with the Advanced TV Group and IAB Tech Lab is not every ad needs to be programmatic, but every ad needs the possibility to be programmatic. And that's where we're working on improving supply chains, improving messaging, improving measurement so that the system can do programmatic ads at scale, particularly with live events. You have a live tentpole event, it could have 100,000 viewers, it can have 10 million viewers. When a commercial break comes in, that trigger hits for everyone at the same time. So that is a huge spike in the data flow across the entire supply chain. So what we are working on right now, and this will be again, public comment going out next week for near real-time viewership API. We have 2 marquee inventory owners already on board with this. So we're looking for feedback on this API where anyone in the supply chain can call this API and get the viewership numbers so that they can preemptively scale up their tech stack to meet those spikes. And this is, again, only step 1 out of several other initiatives. So near real time, we'll say what are the viewership numbers now, and then we are also working on a forecast API so that yes, their forecasting is done, but it's done differently across the board from one platform to another. This allows a standardization of the forecasting.
Very cool. Concurrent Streams API, it will be called, I hear, from Barnaby Edwards in the chat. I assume you work closely with Barnaby. CJ, what's your take on this? Have anything to add here in terms of like when people do buy from the inventory you're collecting or whatever, how do they think about viewership levels? How do they track that? Is it instant? I don't think it is today, right? You have to wait, or tell me about that problem.
It is so offline. I'm excited to hear that this is coming out. And I've talked to Rob Hassoun and Jared and some others that are on that committee. And I mean, right now for us, we even see it as even us understanding what the spikes are going to be for our own creative ad server, let alone the programmatic pipes that we have hooked up now as well. It's huge. Like when that QPS comes in, even we're part of our tech is something called FanServe Connect, and that's what allows the buy side to enter their orders, and we bring facilitates our CTV live sports marketplace, and even that being able to understand what's coming through there would be helpful. But I'm excited to see that this is coming to fruition. Have a lot of questions around where's that data coming from for the viewership, who's buying into this, is there a cost? But I think as that comes out for public comment, we'll definitely be consuming that, and looking forward to seeing you guys on the 4th as well to plug the IAB Tech Lab Summit.
Nice. Ray, any answers to those questions, by the way? Or that's part of the discussion, I realize.
Let's wait until the document's out for public comment, but several of those are addressed both in the document as well as within our live event ad serving working group, which is doing the development of the API.
Okay, great. Expect a little bit of CTV ad portfolio and guidance in Q3, early Q4. Great. Awesome. I do have an anonymous question here. I'll throw this out to the panel. Should publishers focus, maybe for you, Andrew, should publishers focus more on innovative ad formats to compensate for the low fill rates they're seeing in the linear front?
That's a really tough question. And I think that it really depends on a multitude of factors from the scale of the publisher. So, what is a small, medium, or large publisher has shifted quite a bit over the last couple years. So I think scale really does matter. Do you have enough scale to bring demand and manage demand of these advanced formats? They do take implementation, management, and sales. So are you big enough? Speaking back to that walled garden and that separation of demand and supply. After that is, do you have the resources? Do you have the resources to integrate it, to maintain it, to manage it, to report it? And then the third question is it adding to your customer experience? Why are we adding this break? I think that publishers often say more. More ads equals more money. And I think that that's not always true. Experience matters, engagement matters. So I think what I worry about in this market is looking back to digital and the pop-up.
Correct.
We don't want CTV to become the pop-up screen. And at what point do you go too far? Are the innovative ad breaks taking away from the experience in exchange for dollars and cents?
Yeah, I think it's a critical point. I had in there, you do these abstracts in the beginning and then you find out what you're going to talk about. I think I asked every one of you within the context of our prep calls, like, is it true that you really need to be CTV focused? Is CTV really significantly different than mobile and online video? And the answer was like, absolutely, totally different. Different size of files, screen formats, standards, everything about it. So I think it's worth saying that. Any other comments on that particular question from CJ or David from you? I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
I think Andrew really hit it on the ball. I mean, I think there's an element of, first you understand why you have your low fill rates on your linear too. Like you need to understand that before you go to solve the problem. If it's lack of engagement or it's distraction and interference within the content and so forth, then yeah, there's a really interesting opportunity to take that experience better. But is solving and improving the experience going to solve your business problem? I'm not the right guy to answer that.
There's another question that's come up here. How can non-premium publishers, this may be the same person, thank you for contributing your questions. And CJ, I think this goes to you maybe, but how can non-premium publishers sell innovative ad formats when they don't have direct sales teams? And I mean, what do you do if you don't have a direct, or is the answer like, yeah, you kind of have to have a direct sales team, at least something? What do you think, CJ?
So depending on where so if it's coming from Clinch or from Transmit, it depends on what format we're talking about. But I think if I was in that boat, right, if I was consulting for a client in that boat, I think what I would do, yeah, I would take a hard look at, do I get one seller, on contract or something to go out and evangelize that. But I'd also be leaning, just like you'd lean on your SSP, demand teams when you're aligned with the Magnite or Pomatics of the world or OpenX's. I would sit there and say, okay, well, yeah, it'd be part of the deal. You need to bring me so much demand. You need to insure me X dollars. I was talking to a company out at NAB, and a lot of times they can't do certain executions like this without someone bringing dollars to the table. So the teams are like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do this specific integration for this new type of ad unit in the state, even the stadiums, right, or the arenas. But you have to bring a buyer. So how do you connect those people together? You either have to get some boots on the ground for yourself, or you have to rely on that vendor to have those boots on the ground for you. And I wouldn't sign a deal unless they were bringing me some demand to offset.
I mean, I feel like this is coming full circle, and Andrew, I see you shaking. Like, yeah, you got a tech platform. Maybe it's an IndyQ or what have you that's covering all three of these things. Yes, SSAI, very specialized stuff. Who knows? Maybe down the road it's SGAI as well. Ad server, okay, different formats, different mediating between a direct buy and a programmatic. And then the SSP, the supply essentially. And I think Andrew, right? Up to you. If you're a non-premium publisher, you're trying to sell innovative ad formats. Tell me what you guys are thinking. You have to have direct sales. You have to have a guy like you orchestrating the tech stack. Yeah.
I think it comes back to that scale question and the economy of where your business is. You can be a very large non-premium publisher. You could be a very small non-premium publisher. And I agree with CJ. I think that your integrations are going to be dictated by the revenue opportunity of them and the actual returns or diminishing returns of doing that. Are you going to spend more time and money turning on an ad unit that will take 5 years to recoup that spend, whether it's because there isn't demand on the other side and you're growing that business by becoming supply, or because you don't have enough supply to create revenue from that integration? We look at the PIP or squeeze back units, there are less of them. We're not serving a multi-ad unit pod. You're putting these into content, and they're often standalone, which requires a lot of scale to reach those high value of CPMs that you're getting paid out at. So if you don't have millions of users, premium or not, is the format viable? Is your opportunity to create revenue there in the first place? And then it comes down to what is the best path to bringing that revenue? Is it letting the platform sell it? Is it a combination thereof? But I think CJ really hit it on the head, which is for a non-premium or for that small to medium-sized publisher, it's putting pressure on these larger businesses that are creating aggregated sales. CJ used Transmit. That's a good example of you're in a walled garden type advertising experience. Are you ever going to be big enough to sell that standalone, or should you be doubling down with that partner to help them sell you as part of a larger package?
Excellent. And I think you also, during our prep call we talked about scale, right? And you talked about, mini scale, if you will. Elaborate on that. Like there's a way to achieve some kind of scale, a publisher like Cineverse. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. Scale comes down to not just who you are now. I think that there's a large growth of curation in the market and audience and what true audience targetability is, and a growth in the use of data, the commoditization of data, and the control of data. So in the example of Cineverse, small to medium publishers are gaining the opportunity through technology to offer their users outside of their own platforms. And I think that comes all the way back to the beginning of this conversation of blurred lines. Right. Where does a publisher, SSP, or DSP sit in the market? Where is the line between a ad network, a audience network, an ad exchange, an SSP, and a DSP? If they're all selling the exact same thing, who owns it? What is that supply path? And why does that supply path bring value to either the publisher or the buyer? I think that it comes all the way down to the CPM conversation. There are reasons to wholesale media. There are reasons to make off-market deals outside of pure CPM. It could be commitments, it could be safety, and there are reasons not to. I think that where brands and buyers and continually standardization helps is safety. There has to be trust and there has to be safety for the buyers. And I think that as these lines continue to be blurred, measurement, mediation, and safety and transparency matters, in my opinion, more than just the pure conversation of SPO. Can you reach the person you want to reach at a price you want to reach them at? Where does the determination of how directly you reach them start to matter if you're getting all of the other pieces and you're doing it safely?
Fantastic way to wrap it up. I've let us go over time. I apologize. I want to give a huge thank you to David Hassoun and Andrew Barretts and CJ Leonard, and for sure our special guest Raymond Holton. Thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, Steve, for letting us have this great discussion.
Oh, yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I mean, we covered so much new ground here, and I think we could have gone on with this group for another hour. I mean, it was just great stuff. So thank you all. Thanks to the audience. And before we go, a shout out to Jason Hatchett, who correctly identified Take 'em Down by Dropkick Murphys. You'll be receiving an email within the next week or so about how to collect your Amazon gift card. And we will be back right here in half an hour at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time for In AI We Trust, AI and Content Authenticity. So I hope to see you all for that.
Nice.
Thanks again.
Take care, guys.